Akufo-Addo assumed the reins of the government of this country, he was able to upscale our development. For 3 continuous years, we were able to grow this country at an average rate of 7%, a GDP growth rate. But we took a tumble after the affliction of COVID-19. Of course, we had also engaged in the cleanup of the banking sector. Then we had also inherited the legacy of debts at the energy sector. We attempted to clean this up. When we were about coming up, then we had the imbroglio involving Russia and Ukraine. The combination of all these factors has really affected the Ghanaian economy. And so people complain that there are difficulties in the system. And we must all own up that indeed there are difficulties. The flag bearer recognizes this and then proffers some bold solutions to deal with these matters. In particular, we recognize when people talk about difficulties in the system, they are talking about high food prices. They are talking about high prices of accommodation. They are talking about high transportation costs. They are talking about high electricity tariffs, among others. Dr. Bawumia proffers solutions, bold solutions to this. And in that regard, he recognizes that a guy is elected not to explain away problems, but to solve problems, which is why bold solutions are being proffered. First, dealing with the high food prices, that we must upscale the production of staple foodstuffs. We must also invest in the preservation of staple foods, meat, poultry, and fish products. It says to us that we must reduce the cost of public transportation. Then also ensure a variety of accommodation types to meet different pockets and needs. Because we all do know that in Ghana, when you meet a friend, a colleague, beating the streets of Accra or Kumasi or any of the capitals, wiping columns of sweat off his or her forehead and telling you that, Jack, that person is not looking for an owner-occupier structure. It's looking for rental accommodation. How do we deal with this to ease the system? So both solutions again have been profit. And he tells us that he would significantly improve the availability and affordability of power. Finally, in easing the system, confronting the challenges that we face as a nation, he says we continue to make accessing services easier. Now, with me, to deal with the various sector issues, as you have heard, our colleagues, many of whom joined us in the crafting of the manifesto. Since foodstuffs, survival often hinges on eating first, so we'll deal with agriculture, enhancing and upscaling agricultural production and productivity. So I guess at this stage, I would want to invite the spokespersons for agriculture. And I guess the first person to begin it is the Honorable Moses Anim. Moses.
Chairman of the Manifesto Committee, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, the cost of food and other agricultural product affects everybody. When the price of food goes up, it has the potential of denying families and households nutritious food. The NPP realizes that major factors in reducing cost of living is reducing and stabilizing the cost of food. That is why the NPP 2024 manifesto put forth bold solutions to address the cost of food and to increase our food security. We will upscale production of stable crops such as maize, rice, yam, cassava, plantain, tomatoes, and other vegetables, and improve agricultural yields. Much of Ghana's vast agricultural soil has undergone severe degradation, and much of it is too acidic, leading to soil infertility. This is due to factors such as improper use of fertilizers, exchangeable acidity, continuous cropping without fallow periods as was done traditionally, loss of biodiversity and nutrients, and moisture stress. This has resulted in lower crop yields and lower productivity, which means the availability of food is less and thus prices increase. We will promote the use of agriculture lime, especially one that is locally produced in Ghana, to reduce acidity of our soil, enhance soil fertility, and increase yield so that more food will be produced and the unit cost reduced. We will launch an expanded irrigation program, which will include the rehabilitation and modernization and expansion of selected public irrigation schemes, including those undertaken through the One Village, One Dam initiative to increase irrigation area. All these efforts are to drive the cost of local agricultural produce down. More than 90% of the food we consume can only be produced during certain months of the year, but demand continues throughout the year. That is why often leads to the price hikes and we encounter at our market prices. A Bawumia-led government will not only address post-harvest losses, but also improve on the value addition of agricultural products so that food is better harvested and preserved. We will support agricultural mechanization through the provision of agricultural machinery and equipment such as planters, combine harvesters, seed dryers, silos, solar-powered cold stores, freezers, and what have you. We will construct modern storage silos in all agricultural zones and rehabilitate the existing silos to expand storage facilities. By investing in the preservation of staple foods, we will prevent costly post-harvest losses and extend the shelf life of food. We will also strengthen local food network and markets to ensure seamless linkages. We will do this by establishing large aggregators which will offer ready market for farmers. For the aggregators, we will not forget about our market queen mothers and our mothers who also aggregate food for our consumption. This means that the farmers won't have to spend time and money looking for markets, but the aggregator will offtake the produce, thus reducing the cost. We will also assure processing companies of a continuous supply of raw materials through off-taker agreement with factories and commercial entities for entry into the domestic market and export market. The cost of animal feed is another issue that increases cost of food, especially poultry and fish. Poultry and fish feed constitute 70% of the total cost of production. The MPP government will support alternative technology to produce cheaper animal feed to drive down the cost of poultry and farmed fish. As soybean and groundnut are such important multi-purpose crops with use in poultry, livestock, aquaculture, feed, oil, etc., the MPP government will start a special soybean program that will introduce high-yielding varieties, planters, combined harvesters, dryers to increase production. The MPP government will leverage on the vast experience of Ghanaian farmers in cultivation of groundnut by promoting and supporting commercial production and processing of groundnut into edible oil and meal for local consumption and export. Groundnut meal, which is relatively cheaper than the soybean meal, will be strategically used for poultry broilers, livestock feed formulation to help reduce cost of production. We are willing to take bold steps and provide bold solutions for agriculture to reduce the cost of buying food. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've heard the submission on upscaling agriculture and also bringing down the costs of food items. The next to do the presentation would be the presentation on housing, and it's going to be done by the Honorable Sheila Battels.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon to all of you and to everyone that is listening to us. I'm here to share some insights as far as our manifesto on housing is concerned. The vision of His Excellency Dr. Bawumia is to ensure that we are able to close the housing gap within 10 years. As we all know, currently the statistics we are dealing with is a housing deficit of 1.8 million. And this is affecting about 13.4 million Ghanaians. So how are we going to do this? We have broken it into 3 sections. So we are looking at social housing, which is housing that affects mostly the vulnerable in society. And sometimes we may find ourselves in a situation where we are without a home for a night or two. So our social housing plan is looking at providing overnight stay properties, and these are public housing. You can go and register and then sleep there for a night. And then for the vulnerable, or those we usually call the homeless in society, it is a place that they can find to stay for the night. So we have those housing that is going to be available, and then we are also looking at low-income social housing. And for the low-income social housing, we are looking at providing public lands in partnership with developers, so that developers can set aside about 20 to 30% of the land that government brings into the deal. And this will be committed to either subsidized housing or housing for low-income workers. So this, because government is coming in with the land, it will make the cost of building very low. So this would then bring down the cost and enable government to offer these housing at very, very low rates. And we are talking about rental properties also for the general public. As we all know, because of the cost of building, it has become very difficult for real estate developers to offer rental properties at a cost that we can all afford. Typically now, if you're looking for a property, you have to prepare to pay 2 years advance. And for most people, especially those that have finished university, starting out life, coming up with 2 years advance is a very, very big problem. So government is looking at housing that is subsidized, and this will be done in partnership with real estate developers. Government is looking at, or the manifesto is looking at, the government of Dr. Bawumia providing land banks to the developers so that it becomes less litigation. Sometimes when you're building, you know that it can cost 2, 3, 4 times, to pay for the land. So this becomes additional cost to the developers. So if government brings the land and the developer doesn't have to deal with the cost of land, it becomes easier. Also, the government, the manifesto is also looking at partnering with faith-based organizations such as churches to also provide shelter for those who cannot afford, or also the homeless. Then we are also looking at affordable housing. Now with affordable housing, when we say affordable now, we all know that sometimes the price is a bit restrictive. When the price of affordable housing is sometimes in dollars and all of that, and most people cannot afford it, because you have your typical salaried worker taking 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So affordable housing is sometimes not so affordable. So we are looking at providing incentives for the real estate sector so that they can come in with their money, and then we can also partner with those who we identify as master developers. That is those who can afford to build large quantities of homes. Large quantities of homes. If you have a developer that can invest in large quantities of housing, we define them as master developers. We would invest. So you have government investing, you have their own private investing, and then we are also looking at the banking sector participating. So we have specifically identified Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund, and then the Development Bank of Ghana, and then also local and foreign investments partnering to build a fund which we are defining as the Home Ownership Investment Fund for those who want to own a home. So if you want to own a home, they would be able to provide homes at less cost because government is coming in with the land, and government will also inject some capital in there, and then they also will come in with their capital. We are also looking at partnering with pension-backed funds. So there are people who have their pension in certain funds, and they are looking at investments that are safe and secure. We all agree that investing in real estate is effective, and it's something that you can rely on. So the investment that they make into the Home Ownership Investment Fund will enable it to be well capitalized so that we can provide a lot of housing to meet the demand of the public. In addition to this, we are looking at the state also providing horizontal infrastructure, that is providing the road infrastructure, water, electricity, metering, and all of that. So the infrastructure that is needed within the developments of these master developers. All of those things are costs that usually the master developers will build into the cost of the home. So with government taking these things out, it will reduce the cost of housing. We believe that with all of these interventions, it will actually really cut down the cost of housing and be able to produce affordable housing for the Ghanaian. Now, we are looking at also providing rental assistance scheme, which I think we've already started a rental assistance scheme. It's covering 6 regions now. We are looking at expanding it beyond 6 regions to 16 regions. So all the 16 regions should have that scheme. Right now, over 2,000 people are benefiting. So the expectation is that we would expand it to ensure that anybody who needs the rental assistance will be able to achieve it. Now, if you look at the rental assistance scheme, you fill a form. It's very simple. You should have 3 months of income to prove that you are able to afford the rent that you are applying for. And with your Ghana card showing the ID that will be able to use to track you, the rental assistance scheme will pay the advance that is needed for you to be able to access the property, so that you will then pay monthly, every first of the month, then you will settle your rent. So we are looking at expanding on the rental assistance scheme so that that will come in to ensure that we can afford to rent. Now, generally, there is a lot of work that is going to go into urban planning and rural planning, because we have challenges now with spatial planning. There is a lot of work that is going to go into ensuring that what we are delivering is not only quantity, but quality, well-planned housing to ensure that Ghanaians are getting very decent housing and living standards. And I believe that that kind of captures Dr. Bawumia'S manifesto as far as housing is concerned, to ensure that the vulnerable are covered, those who want to own homes are covered, those who can afford are covered, those who cannot afford but want to own their own homes are given a chance or a way by which they can also own their own homes. Those who want to rent will have the options to rent, and then those who want to live well also will have good communities to live in. So I'll end it here, and I believe that my colleagues will also have something to share on their sectors. Thank you very much.
The next presenter, a presentation on energy, making energy available, accessible, and affordable. One major complaint is the high cost of power. And yet we all do know that power is the lifeblood of both domestic existence and also industrial production. Now, to make the presentation on behalf of the group is Mr. Kojo Nsafua Puku.
All right, thank you. As you've seen the way the DMB manifesto is set up and how we want to present it, we told you how we're going to get you a roof over your head. When you have a roof over your head, you now tell you how you're going to eat. So a Greek has done it, roof over your head. Then the next thing is energy. We realize that the energy sector is by far one of the most important sectors that we have in Ghana today. The upstream provides the funding for the social and infrastructure programs that we have in Ghana. The downstream is our petroleum products, which mostly everybody knows that when the price of petroleum products goes up, it affects food, it affects everything that we have in the country. And it also goes to reduce what you call disposable income, which is the small money you have in your pocket after you've paid off all the things you have. When we look at the power sector is a difference between a president doing 4 terms, a president doing 4 years, and a president doing 8 years. We all know what we are talking about here when the power sector is not the way it's supposed to be. Then we look at how Dr. Bawumia wants to address this. We want to reduce the cost of living. And in the MPP manifesto, we have decided to do that with 4 pillars: affordability, accessibility, reliability, and quality. Okay, so let's take affordability. Now, we all know that when electricity prices go up, it becomes a challenge for everybody. So the leadership of Dr. Bawumia has proposed to introduce 2,000 megawatts of solar. The 2,000 megawatts of solar will go a long way to basically help us with the growth that we have year on year in the energy sector. Because if you do not plan to increase your power generation, you get to the point where you do not have enough generation capacity in the country. But what is the difference with going solar? As we've all heard Dr. Bawumia said over and over, we have to move away from oil and gas and go with solar. Solar is, the sun is there, it's free. Now, the biggest challenge we have is that the thermals that we have is 73% generation. Our generation mix is made up of the hydro, thermals, and some solar, about 134 megawatts of solar. But in large, 73% of our generation today is with thermal. And the huge cost that goes into the thermal is your gas and your HFO liquid fuel. If we're able to now have a generation mix that is heavily on solar, as we've always heard, we can reduce the cost of electricity as low as 50%. So that goes towards the affordability of what Dr. Bawumia is trying to do, which is bringing in the 2,000 megawatts to help us with what? Affordability. Then we go to the second policy that we have, which is we want to develop a framework to set aside cheaper fuel for industries. We have a lot of industries that are not doing well in Ghana because the energy cost is high. If we go solar and we're able to get solar at 6 cents, as compared to today, thermal at about 12 to 13 cents, then we're able to give some cheaper power to the industries. Now, if you're looking at the lithiums, you're looking at manganese, allied, all these companies are coming in and they're looking at 2 cents, 3 cents at most for power. So we can give some of that Kosomo generation, which is hydro, which is around 3 cents, to the new emerging technology. We have a lot of manufacturing that we want to promote in Ghana. Dr. Bawumia has a policy that says, buy Ghana first. For us to make what? Ghana produce, our made in Ghana goods effective, cheaper, we need to give them what? Affordable power. So by giving affordable power, ring fencing a certain amount of cheap electricity for these industries, we tend to what? Grow our industries, bring a lot of growth, and that also go in a long way, not only reducing the cost of living by doing what? Making sure that a lot of youth get jobs. So the affordability side, which is ring fencing a certain amount of electricity for industries, also will help to promote industry and bring jobs, and makes us pay less for electricity. We pay less for electricity all the rest is history. Everybody knows that we can now have a reduced cost of living. The third part of the affordability is petroleum. The energy sector deals with energy, which is power, deals with energy, which is petroleum. When petroleum prices go up, we all feel it. When electricity prices go up, we all feel it. We introduced G4O, gold for oil policy, which helped a lot. A lot of people don't understand how the gold for oil helped. I will take a minute to explain. We have something called the supplier's premium. We have the cost of the product, which we can't do anything about because it's the world market price. But when the OTC, the oil trading company, is bringing that product into Ghana, there is a supplier's premium that they add. In the past, before gold for oil, there's only a few companies that were bringing product affordable power. Then we all want quality. Now, to get quality, the person who gives us the electricity, the retail end, is ECG. We all have complaints when we go to the ECG customer service and we are not happy. Your metering is not working. People can't get meters. People go to report faults and nobody comes to it. So the proposal from the manifesto is to now introduce what we call the retail market. The last mile of ECG will bring in what we call private sector participation, PSP, to now take up the retail part. So your metering will be done by a private company. Your customer service will be done by a private company. When we take that part away from ECG, we think that we'll be able to introduce that quality that Ghanaians deserve. Because there's no point trying to live a good life and you can't now go and report and you get immediate action on the report of electricity that you have. Then we now go into accessibility. As at now, we have about 85% of electricity across the country. With the introduction of the 2,000 megawatts, we can easily go in and give Ghana 100% electricity accessibility by the end of the 4 years. Because we no longer have to rely on SHEP. With the SHEP Rural Electrification Program, we need to draw the Akosomo or the thermal lines to these areas. With solar, you can do what is called off-grid solutions. So we'll go to these communities where we have the who are not on the grid and build solar for those communities to basically immediately give them electricity. Today we are talking about other things like affordability. For somebody who doesn't have electricity, cost of living is very bad. So when we're able to now improve the standard of living of these people and giving them solar, they will be able to reduce the cost of living that they have. The last point I want to make is the issue of bringing in issues that will impact the life of Ghanaians. Look, Manifesto is not just about a document that nobody reads. I think Ghanaians should look at the MPP Manifesto more carefully. Page 178 to some parts of the manifesto talks about all the energy policies that we have. Let's not let others, introduce policies that do not solve your problems. The MPP Manifesto has solutions that solves your problems, and I think you guys will make sure that you understand that policy well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kojo Nsafuapoku, for the brilliant exposition on energy supply, access, and affordability. I think the last one to be spoken to is with respect to transportation. Yes, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to everyone. We've eaten, or we'll eat, we'll sleep, And when Mr. Nsafua gets his fuel, he cannot carry it in gallons. They have to go into vehicles for them to move. And that is what I'm here to talk about. And with all that we've spoken about, the fulcrum of everything when it comes to cost of living is transportation. And how do we get this reduced as compared to what is happening now? And for someone like me who comes from one of the poorest regions in this country, anything that has to do with reducing cost of living, and especially when it's going to be done and championed by a leader who believes in making bold decisions and achieving bold solutions through selfless leadership and understanding that leadership is service and leading is solving. That is why I'm here this afternoon. So there are 4 key things that Dr. Bawumia'S led government, if voted in power, and I believe after this, Ghanaians will be more convinced to give him the mandate to lead this country, because we can't go back. We need to go for it. The world is moving, and we need to catch up. So there are 4 key things that we are going to do, led by Dr. Bawumia. And the first one is EV transportation, that's electric vehicle transportation. We've heard about it. There are people who are still using, who are already using them. So it's not something that is not possible. And how are we going to do this? We all know that when it comes to regulation, when it comes to policy making, and when it comes to regulation, it's the government that has to lead it. It's the state that has to lead it. And we mandate the President of the Republic to lead in that charge. So with that, we are going to look at having a comprehensive strategy of bringing in electric vehicles and also encouraging the assembling of it. And we've done something like that already for vehicles that use fossil fuels. We have about 5 assembling plants already, but we need to move where the world is moving, and the world is moving EV. So that's what we are going to do. So as part of government's strategy, when Dr. Bawumia is given the mandate, there will be a comprehensive strategy to ensure that EV vehicles, especially for public transport, which all of us use one way or the other, it's made accessible. And one may ask, these vehicles need to be charged. How are we going to get them charged? Will I move from here to maybe Hamile and not have a place to charge them? Government is going to invest. And you know the New Patriotic Party and what we believe in. We believe in the private sector. And we are really going to collaborate with the private sector to make sure that these things are being done, especially when it comes to those already in the energy sector. The second one is availability of parts. I mean, these EV vehicles run on parts, apart from having a cheaper mode of moving them around. And on the average, if I'm using fossil fuel in my 1.5 cc car, I need maybe if I need like 800 cedis fuel to fill it for a month, someone using an electric vehicle will charge their car on the average of 2.3, less than 2.3. So if I'm doing 800, then the person is doing around 300 cedis on that. That is what we mean by reducing cost of living through transportation. So availability of fairly priced parts for these vehicles. And once they are available, and they are fairly priced through the flat rate system that will be introduced when it comes to importing these parts. And don't forget that we've also mentioned that in the strategy, assembling will be part of it. So with time, the manufacturing of these parts will become part of the whole value chain in country. But as we start introducing them, we import parts. There should be a flat rate for it so that it can be fairly priced. Not that someone is bringing in it from another country. Once you are bringing in parts, if it's a 20-footer, if it's a 40-footer, it comes at a flat rate. So you know that these parts are coming in. So it gives a way to even predict and sustain pricing. But if they are fairly priced and available, they must be accessible anywhere to anyone. So we are also looking at building the marketplace for this. And these things are online. The world is going digital, and Dr. Bawumia has been a champion of that. So digital, and who do you again engage? The fintechs. They're already doing fantastically well. Young people are building a lot of apps, a lot of platforms, marketplaces for these things. Now we have marketplaces for vehicles when you want them, but parts, you have to go to Abusokai and all that. Just recently at Postal and Courier Services, we registered a gentleman who said he wants to be taking vehicle parts in addition to fuel. So someone is on the highway, runs out of fuel, he will take it to them. That's a true courier service. So people like that can be incentivized to continue doing what they are doing. Then the third one is reforming our driver license system. Rather than you renewing your driver's license every other year, it's going to expand it to 10 years and you renew it every 5 years. Then one that we can, the fourth one is what we can't overemphasize. The Energy Committee has already spoken about it, and that's gold for oil. I mean, at the end of the day, the negotiations of the price and everything is what we take at the pump that makes meaning to us. So gold for oil, the expansion of it takes pressure off Forex, it takes pressure off a lot of things, and that also is something that we ensure. And when it comes to the vehicle charging systems for the EV, we're also going to ensure a serious energy mix, and the focus will be on solar, so that most of these plants don't come at prices that are not affordable and give meaning to reducing cost of living. Thank you.
Okay, so we would at this point take questions. We've heard the various presentations, basically running through very critical areas that affect the day-to-day lives of the people. Housing, food security, utilities, energy, transportation. And you'd realize that the issues have been touched on and connected to how it intends to help reduce the cost of living of the Ghanaian people. And clearly you would realize that most of the issues are things that are ongoing, which the Vice President intends to upskill going into the future. So when we talk about upgrade, it is basically to say that let's consolidate what we've been able to achieve whilst we pursue what's outstanding. Please get to the microphone and then we'll take your questions. Kindly lift your hands and then you move to the microphones and then we'll take your questions. Please. GBC.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Peter Kwao Adato. I work with GH1 TV. Now, we understand that there is food challenge in the country, as you enumerated. But before then, we know of PFJ and PFJ2. And these were touted over the years that it's been improving agri productivity in this country. Now, if today we are saying we have food crisis, is it an admission that this program that we have highlighted and talked about so much has failed? Then there are pledges to improve a lot of things in this country. And the one who is making the pledges is within the same group that has been leading us this far. Why is it that the plans and the fine ideas and all these things that he has for us, we are not able to witness any of them within the aspiring administration? That if he gets the note, we will be able to get these things and improve the lives of Ghanaians. In addition to that, there is Ghana Beyond Aid that we had in 2016. Now, we all know Ghana is not beyond aid. What is the guarantee that the promises that we are seeing today, or we are hearing from Dr. Bawumia, we are going to get them when we have similar promises.
I
and
think what you said
assurances.
is the same as the second question. So
Assurances,
I think you should land at this point.
that we have
Because
seen.
it's the same question.
The
It's
final
enough.
one-
No.
the final one
no,
is
no, no.
about-
No, don't do that. One, you're supposed to even do what? Let your colleagues do Kojo Brace. Don't do that. It's not fair to your colleagues.
So you talk about launching the irrigation scheme in addition to, and then you bring on board the
Irrigation scheme.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you bring in the one village, one dam as well. There's been a lot of discussions about how many of the one village, one dam you were able to complete, because that was a flagship policy. So as we speak, how many have been completed, which could serve as a benchmark for us to then evaluate the ones going forward?
Okay, thank you. So that's Kojo Brace from Joy News. He's asking how many of the one village, one dam have we done, and based on which we look into the future. Any other? Then we'll call for. Okay, Kojo.
There's no one coming. I heard about the low-income social housing scheme, where government is to provide land for developers to build, so they could rent at lower rates to people. At another point, you say, government is going to partner with large-scale developers. At that point, I didn't really understand what government wants to do there, because you're looking at people who can build large quantity houses. What will government do in that particular one to ensure that the rate at which they'll be selling the houses or renting will be cheaper for people to afford? I want to understand the role of government.
So you had a plan.
Yes.
Of government partnering with large-scale developers.
Exactly.
And you want to see how that would impact.
Exactly, because at the low-income one, you say government will provide land. I understand that point.
Okay.
But when it comes to the large developers, I don't really understand.
You don't know whether it's the land that government is providing
exactly,
that would.
So what government wants to do there?
All right, thank you. Please.
Efrem Kojoba for Mewanjo TV. Masim Bisade say media energy. So share enyinam kanea nsemo a ewo mai mu a eya say ECG and eya problem e dey ama consumers. Esa say eba ECG kanea wo dey ma provide consumers a empempi no ECG find it difficult say ogigi ni sika. Into one more a supply ECG to say grid cool any other we know. The biana is ECG at the omoka. Into say koba say ECG ebetua car. Ayada the bia the or how ba. Mibusa say ECG and some omoka say the biano omoko to. Kania na obisa me da say.
Okay, it's a question here on ECG. And a question about so omobenya
and the exchange rate
issues. So then I buy yafa and a plant near then on the exchange rate. Okay. Next question, please. We'll take one more and then we'll give the responses. Okay. So leader, I think there's a question on Agric. The question is asking what planting for food and jobs successes has been in the face of food crisis, and as to whether there is a food crisis, and if there is a food crisis, is it to say that planting for food and jobs has failed? So there are two questions. First of all, you must respond as to whether there is food crisis, and then afterwards indicate what you think the impact of planting for food and job has been, and then also if you can give the numbers as to the number of one village, one dam we have constructed thus far. Honorable Senior, I think we take these ones.
Thank you very much. In the first place, we are not in food crisis. We are not in food crisis. The food production level of our staple fruits are available, and the figures are there. We can even look at the agricultural growth for this period that will be in power. So there's no food crisis. The Planting for Food and Jobs phase 1 hasn't really failed, no. But like we indicated in the manifesto, we still have challenges with climate change. We still have challenges with the acidity of our soil. And we still have challenges in the level at which we embrace technological transformation. What it means is that we still have to do more in preservation and storage that the manifesto has really indicated. So we are not in food crisis. And I know you are all aware we are not in food crisis. If you look at the phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs, the figures are all stated even at this level. How resilient we are at this level, the numbers have all been stated. And then the projection in terms of short term and medium term and longer term up to 2028 have all been indicated. And I know you all go to the market. As a matter of fact, if we are in food crisis, you will know. And we are not in food crisis. For one village, one dam, we've completed over 420 dams as we speak. You realize that just recently, when we did an experiment with the International Water Management Institute by stocking some of the dams at the northern sector with tilapia, it became very successful and the harvest rate was good. Just recently, government has provided funds to stock tilapia into these dams, 1 million fingerlings into these dams, which the president went with the minister to launch. It tells you those dams are still alive and we are using them in their multi-purpose function, both in irrigation and also in aquaculture. Thank you very much.
I think the if we take the housing question, what the large scale, you're asking about how the large scale developers and what government's role it is and how it will impact on lower housing.
Thank you very much. That plan is something that government is going to participate fully. So government will be part of the price setting. So government will set a ceiling. Because remember, government is bringing the land, and then they are bringing horizontal infrastructure such as the water, electricity, road infrastructure. So it cuts down the cost for the developers. So with that, government can participate, and their government will also look at waivers, tax waivers for this infrastructure, because it's something that is going to benefit the public. So government will set the ceilings for these housing so that we can have real affordable housing for people to purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you need to understand the pricing that is done by PURC. The issue of when you say that we pay cedis and dollar, there is a quarterly review and there is a major review that's done by PURC all the time. Whenever the quarterly review is done, the two key components is inflation and the FX. So what you pay, PURC factor that into the pricing. The biggest challenge in what ECG suffers is not the FX, it is the losses. Today, our technical losses is about 10%. Our financial losses, or what we call commercial losses, is upwards of 19%. What is commercial losses? The inability to collect the electricity bills, people who don't have meters and still using electricity, or people who have done illegal connection, they have meters but they've done illegal connections. They all constitute what you call the commercial losses, and it's upwards of 19%. So let's even say it's 20%. It means that for every 1,000 cedis of electricity that you give out there, 20 cedis, 200 cedis is lost. Then we need to now pay the value chain and transmission losses, technical losses about 10%. So between technical and commercial, 30%. Then transmission losses are about 8%, 38%. That is why the private sector introduction, the private sector participation at the last mile. The last mile is where you do your metering. There is something called boundary metering, which work has been started. So all the country has different districts that we want to boundary meet up. So ECG is going to be there. ECG takes the electricity of 1,000 cities, and let's say there are 4 concessionaires that's been given out to private sector. Then all these 4 concessions has boundary metering. So ECG gives out 4,000 worth of electricity to 4 people, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 through the boundary metering. As far as ECG is concerned, how much do they want back? 1,000 cities. It's up to you, the private sector who is within that concession, to pay back ECG 1,000 cities. So we are de-risking the metering, the customer service, and the collection from ECG and giving it to the private sector. And we think the private sector will do a much better job in collecting this work. Look, ASAP did a story. There is a lot of dirt and rot at the district and the regional level of ECG. It's a big company, but we think that if we have a more focused company that does the engineering and take the retail away from ECG, we will get a much better result. In terms of the customer, the IPPs being paid the dollar, they are paid the dollar rate, but in cities. They are not paid dollars, but the rate at which they are paid, because their power purchase agreement is set in dollar. But that is factored in the pricing that PULC done every quarter, which you and I pay. I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll take another set of questions. But to address your second question on GH1. So if you pick our manifesto, you realize our manifesto is structured in 3 ways. What we met when we came to office as at 2017 is there in the manifesto, which you have copies. What we have done so far, sector by sector, is also there. And then what we are proposing for the future. And so for each of the sectors that are of interest to you, you'd realize that these 3 narratives will be there for you to consume. The fact of the matter is that wherever we find ourselves, we would have 2 key things in there. What we've been able to achieve and what is outstanding to do. And that is why we are going to the polls. We are not going to the polls to simply take a decision on somebody's time is 8 years, so it's up. It should go for somebody else to come. The conversation we are having this evening is to look at what your solution is to the situation that we have. And I don't think issues of cost of living is one that is ever out of any country's conversation. Take the first world countries, take the second and third world countries. Issues of cost of living would always come up. And this afternoon, what we are discussing is the MPP and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia'S proposition to deal with the issues of cost of living. In doing that, our speakers have outlined specific areas where we believe they go to directly affect the cost of living. Housing, which I don't think has been an issue that is just coming up. But when you pick our manifesto and go through it, you'd realize that a lot has been done in the housing sector, both for the general citizens and for key public sector institutions. No government in the 4th Republic in 8 years has provided so much housing for our security services like we have done under this government. And that's a matter of fact. The State Housing Corporation was almost collapsed when we came to office. Today, the company that was completely collapsed is delivering housing, not just housing in remote areas, but even in the heart of the city, Adenta, and so many other places. And they are not only focusing on even in the urban areas, but you go all the way to the western north region, and you have state housing providing housing there. You go to the eastern region, Koforidua, you have state housing providing housing there. What you find in the manifesto is what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia'S plans are for housing, which includes using what we have done so far as a base to leapfrog into the future. And so to say that because you are in government, why are you not doing all the things that you are saying now is completely erroneous. The fact is that you are continuing to consolidate what you have been able to do, build upon it, and then retrofit what is outstanding. And that's what governance is all about. If that question is legitimate, then I'm sure the person with the biggest responsibility to respond to that will be our opponent, the former president. And what I think you should be calling for today is to call them and ask them, can you outline specifically what your solution to reducing the cost of living is? And then we'll interrogate the two solutions, what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is proposing and what the former president is proposing. When you are done with that interrogation, the next level will be between the two people, who do we trust or believe can deliver on these promises? Fortunately, we have a measure, or we have indicators to measure the two people. One has been president before, and so for him, he's only coming to tell us things he wants to do. We have given him the responsibility before. And so before he even tells us anything at all, you should be asking him, when we gave you the responsibility to be president, can you tell us what you did under each of these things that you are telling us to vote for you? And I think the conversation should be elevated to that level so we can get the voter, the Ghanaian voter, to make very informed decision moving forward. We'll take a last round of questioning and then wait. Leader.
I think to add to what Miracles has just said, with respect to the questioner who wanted to know why the person presenting this new manifesto is being part of the current administration. So why is he coming out with different methods of resolving the problems of this country? I think the response should be obvious. President Rawlings succeeded himself in 1996. Did he have the same manifesto as he had in 1982? The 1996 manifesto of the NDC was significantly different from the 1992, even though Rawlings succeeded himself. President Kufuor succeeded himself. The second stanza of his administration, the manifesto, was markedly different because society is dynamic. President Mahama, when he succeeded President Mills, he didn't have the same manifesto, he didn't repeat the same manifesto because circumstances have changed. I think this is, with the greatest respect, it should be obvious to all of us. In any event, even twins do not have identical minds. Executive authority in this country is vested in one person. The vice president is always an advisor to the president. He's the prime advisor, I should say. It doesn't mean that whatever is proposed by the vice president will be taken by the president, because, as I said, executive authority is vested in the president. It is the reason why, even though President Mahama, at the time a vice president, described himself as the luckiest vice president at the time in the world, he said, because he was given the greatest ambit to operate, he didn't mimic the manifesto under President Evans Atta Mills. So that, I guess, should respond to this. I think the other matter, the cost of living. Yes, again, society is dynamic. Tell me, even with the ruling administration, right, you see that every year there's this meeting involving the tripartite group, employers, employees, government. Is that not the case? If circumstances remain the same, there will not be any need. It is a recognition that year on year the cost of living, rises, and the nation, the government will have to respond to same. Much less, between government, one government and a succeeding government. Circumstances certainly will not be the same. I think that the issue about food crisis has been responded to. Let's admit that at a point in time, we had food inflation. I mean, admittedly, food prices rose. But flashback, in 2016, before NPP assumed the reign of this government, we're importing plantain from La Côte d'Ivoire, cassava from La Côte d'Ivoire, cocoyam from La Côte d'Ivoire. Today, these are things of the past. Today, admittedly, these are things of the past. That is why, even though we have upscaled enrollment in secondary schools, we are able to have domestic supply to feed our students there. And also, you will recognize that recently, the Minister for Agriculture, and before then, even the former Minister, Dr. Usuefu Yakoto, came with some administrative instructions that we should stop the export of maize and other cereals to our neighboring countries because of the recognition that food prices were going up. And the other countries were coming in really to fetch everything from, especially the northern sections of our country, which is the grain basket of our country. They were exporting them. So we have to place this embargo on them. Planting for Food and Jobs has been successful. Yes, we need to escalate it. We need to deepen and expand it. But it's not being a failure. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, leader. I see about 1 or 2 more hands. So we'll take those ones and then we'll do the tree wrap up. Ampedu. 1, 2. Let me see what the hands so that we take it once and for all. 1, 2, 3. Oh, there's a bit more. Okay. I'll call.
Yes, I'm Welbeck from Multimedia. I heard Honorable Bartels talk about a social housing plan, and she mentioned that citizens were going to be registered to some housing units where they could sleep for a night. And I also heard about the fact that she talked about partnering faith-based organizations to provide accommodation for citizens. My question on that is, how practicable and feasible is that module? I think that we need a bit more of an insight into that. But again, on housing, with a large number of Ghanaians employed in the non-formal sector, my question is, how are market folks, artisans, and self-employed citizens going to be roped into these
schemes,
housing schemes? And in view of the fact that we all know that data gathering on these category of citizens is very scanty in this country, how are you going to even track the people in that category who may want to access such a facility, and how they are going to even pay for it?
But I admit that the Ghana card has made a lot of these data challenges much easier. I'm sure you agree to that. Deru, if you can, please let's move towards so we can quickly ask our questions in succession.
Okay, thank you. My name is...
You come last, after all the others. Let's be fair.
I work with Wuntumi and Movement TV. The gold for oil policy was supposed to be a game changer, but people don't seem to appreciate the impact of the gold for oil policy. Somewhere in November last year, we were made to understand that for a better appreciation of the gold for oil policy, we need to achieve at least 50% volume at the pump. And Mr. Kojosa Poku just made mention that we are around 30%. I want to know what is preventing us from achieving the 50% or more.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Paul. I work with Atenka TV. My question borders on agric. When the Honorable Moses Enim was making a submission, he made mention of the fact that the plan of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is to upscale the production of certain staples in the country. We know recently that the price of tomatoes saw a hike, and the fact was that our tomato sellers were going all the way to Burkina Faso and in the Sahel, some parts of the Sahel regions to bring in tomatoes. What is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia'S plan to make sure that tomato production and supply into our market is all year round? Another part is also that he made mention of value addition. Currently, there are certain factories that add value to our foodstuffs from the farms. The Wenchi tomato factory has been dormant for a very long time. Currently, we are seeing a conundrum with a Commander Sugar factory. What is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia'S plan to revive some of these dormant factories so as to add value to most of these food that perishes in times of the bumper season? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Midende Felix Techi, me Edmo GM 7DS TV, Accra. Business 2016-17 Urbano, Abama Yeti as I say, planting for foods and jobs or the bar. na yɛbɛsisi warehouse. Of course, a warehouse na wɔbɛsisi. Then na bɛnti a yɛntumi store saa nneɛma na yɛyɛ wɔ Ghana ha no ama sala nneɛma no bɔɔ den ɛwɔ Ghana ha. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Vanessa Adotumboateng, Metro TV. My question is to Mr. Kojo Fuku. You mentioned about the affordability, reliability, and quality power supply to all Ghanaians through the rollout of 2,000 megawatts of utility power solar power. Just this morning, I had a message from a friend. She says, the ECG in Volta region want to kill us. Light bill is 3,000 Ghana cedis per month. Now, my question is,
what does your friend, hold on.
What?
Light bill can be 5,000 or 20,000 or 100 cedis.
I know,
depends on
but
what your friend does.
For the house, I mean, it's above what she normally pays.
So I think that is where the issue is, but not the value.
Yes, that is where the issue is, okay. Above, like.
But not the value, because the value there, it's very relative.
Come on.
Yeah, you agree with me?
Come on.
Please go ahead.
So my question is, how will the affordability of electricity be ensured, especially for the low-income households and the vulnerable communities? Thank you.
Okay. Peter, GH1. Madam Batel, the innovative electric vehicle plan, you told us that we're going to include production, manufacturing and production, get importation and this. I want to know what plans are in the manifesto for local industries like Kantaka, Swami, and other Ghanaians who are into automobile manufacturing, so that we can increase the wealth generation in this country. Thank you.
My name is Charles from Kesbim, India. You have proposed extension of driver's licenses. Driver's license validity to 10 years and its renewal for 5 years. What specific measures would your government will put in place to ensure that this policy maintains road safety standards? And how does the government plan to address concern regarding potential long-term oversight in drivers' fitness and roadworthiness? So that is what I want your government to address and help us.
Thank you.
Because drivers are very much concerned.
Thank you. Last question that we.
All right. My name is Mark Byron with UTV. Your policy to reduce cost of living is commendable, but climate change has been blamed for the current drought in the northern part of the country. And we are all aware of what you said, Honorable Moses Enim said about the number of dugouts, one village, one dams that we have. What has been its impact? And what is a sustainable alternative that we are going to get to ensure that government, Bawumia'S government, will be able to sustain the food production that they are talking about? Well, climate change is going to get worse. So what is the sustainable irrigation policy that you have? Well, currently what we have has not lived. We all know how it has lived with all of us. If it's good, the drought will not happen. What is the sustainable irrigation measure you are coming up with in the north? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So please let's